Hi again, precious friends. Thanks for joining me one more time, Aunt Patty the Carnivore Hippie. So, today, thinking about macros. Should I track those or should I not? Well, I used to. Macros are, in case you don't know, probably a lot of you are aware, macros is simply short for macronutrients. And that's the three major chemical forms that our food comes in: fat, protein, and carbohydrates. And if you're doing a ketogenic diet, you might be being told that you need to keep track of your macros because you want to keep your carbohydrates under a certain level and your protein under a certain level, and you want to keep your fat sometimes above a certain percentage of your food intake. And for a long time, well, not for a long time, but for a certain period of time, I did track my macros. Well, first of all, I was new to the keto diet and I thought that you had to. And second of all, it gave me kind of a sense of empowerment, the feeling that, oh, I was doing it right. But eventually, I left off doing it. And basically, the reason why I left off doing it is because tracking macros is not an easy thing to do. You have to look up a lot of stuff on tables and you have to weigh all your food, and it's basically takes up a pretty good deal of time. And there are plenty of people who will say, well, it's too hard to do, so you might as well not bother trying to be low carb anyway, because you can't do it right because it's too hard. Well, that's just stupid. If everybody should just not do anything that was too hard, most things that are hard in the world would never get done. So that's just a dumb argument. Just don't do it because it's too hard. But the reason I stopped doing it wasn't because it was too hard. It was because I found out it kind of triggered my problematic food behaviors. When you're on a keto diet, you're in that sort of information sphere and you're looking at YouTube videos and Facebook groups, you tend to get exposed to a lot of keto treats. And if you're coming from a like sugar addiction or food addiction sort of a background, well, we decided we were going to call it problematic food behaviors. If you struggle with problematic food behaviors, you may be in a situation where your little addictive brain is going, oh, I can still have all these good, wonderful, yummy treats and not feel bad about it. And the reality of it is, most of those keto treats are kind of at the top end of what's reasonable for carbohydrate consumption on a low carb diet. And it's way easier than you think to just eke up a little too much over. Because as we've talked about before, nobody can tell you how many carbs are optimal for you. Nobody can tell you what percentage of macros of this or that are optimal for you. You have to do it yourself. You have to experiment a little bit and you have to figure it out. And I found out for me that indulging in the keto treats, which was very tempting, actually resulted in me overeating carbohydrates. And it actually ended up triggering my problematic behaviors in that it was very difficult for me to moderate my intake. And I started having cravings for them. So it was triggering the behaviors that I was going on the keto diet to solve. So I eventually just had to, I've actually stopped tracking my macros because I didn't really need to track my macros because I just decided I wasn't going to take part in the keto treats anymore. And the thing that made me able to actually make that decision was the fact that my brain had healed enough with the high fat diet to where I could start controlling myself better with that, and with the help of my wonderful lifestyle and diet coach. So I stopped tracking my macros. And it was a great relief, let me tell you. It's not just a simple thing. I mean, some people, I'm sure, can be really good at it, and you'll hear people say, "Oh, well, it wasn't a big deal." And maybe there are people who just like doing math and calculations, but I don't. I stopped tracking my macros, and I learned pretty quickly that I could tell whether I was at a good level of protein to fat by how I felt. And it didn't take long. It only took 3 or 4 weeks before I realized that I could tell by the way I felt when I got up in the morning and my energy level through the day, whether I was eating enough fat or eating enough protein, right? And I still was eating a small amount of carbohydrates, but I wasn't eating any of the keto treats. I wasn't eating almond flour and coconut flour and other things, or fiber. Some people just add fiber to their food because, I don't know, they think if you add fiber, you can take off sugar grams. That's not how it works. But I've met people who think if you want to eat 3 tablespoons of sugar, then all you need to eat, make sure you get 45 grams of fiber in a day, and it cancels each other out. And that's, believe me, that is not the way it works. That's dumb. You can't, the fiber doesn't take the sugar out of your body. Let me just put that right out there. But there are people who think that it does. Anyway, I digress. I stopped tracking my macros, and I found that I could just prioritize protein. I just ate as much protein as I wanted, with the fat that came along with it. Since I was eating mostly meat almost always comes with fat. And if I was eating a pretty lean piece of meat, like some seafood or some chicken breast, which I do like occasionally, I would just add some butter to it until it tasted good. And then I found, as the longer that I did that, the less problem I had with my appetite, and the longer I could go between meals. And so now, after having learned all this, it's really simple for me to stick to my food plan. It's not always easy, but it's really simple. I get up in the morning. I'm not hungry first thing in the morning, which is great for me because I have things to do in the morning and I don't have to stop and eat something. I just drink a cup of coffee or 2 with some heavy cream, and that keeps me going till roughly lunchtime, 11ish or 12ish or so. And then I have a meal, usually my main meal of the day, and it's usually about 3/4 of a pound of meat, or about half a pound of meat and a couple of eggs. And like I say, if I'm eating a real lean type of animal food, then I add some butter to it. And if I'm eating beef or pork, I just eat the fat. And we've already talked about raw ground beef. Yeah, I'm still saying, I still think you should try it. Just get up the guts. Anyway, it's not complicated. It doesn't need to be complicated. Eat meat and fat to satiety for every meal. Don't cut out all the plant foods to begin with. Just prioritize meat. Have yourself a plate of meat and some salad. Little tomato, cucumber, lettuce, or some non-starchy vegetables. I love fried cabbage. I still love fried cabbage. So cabbage you can generally eat without worrying about the carb content. What else? Most of the cruciferous. I would avoid cauliflower though. Cauliflower is surprisingly carby, and lots of keto people just eat cauliflower out the butt because it reminds them of potatoes, I guess. But celery, salad greens, watch out for the super dark salad greens. I eat butter lettuce and iceberg because it's low in anti-nutrients. But what you're aiming at, eventually, once you get there, once you're able to transition meat and fat to satiety for every meal, and if you do that, and you only eat 2 to 3 times a day or even once, you'll find you don't need to track anything because your body will begin to tell you what it wants and you'll listen. And I talked in another video about how I'm learning to listen to what my body wants to tell me. And I'm getting better at perceiving what my body wants. So that's it for right now. If you don't want to track macros, don't. If somebody's telling you you're doing it wrong, if you're tracking macros, just ignore them. And on top of everything else, keep in mind, your goal should be to create the most vibrant health within your body that you can. Once your body gets healthy and has time to repair itself, the excess fat will go away. I promise. But fat accumulates because your body is unhealthy. And once your body is healthy, your body will begin to burn or metabolize your fat stores for fuel. You will be less hungry. You won't need as much food because your body's using up the groceries that are on board. Please don't get this backwards. You will seriously derail yourself if you focus too much on losing fat and the scale. I'm begging you, don't do that. Focus on getting your body healthy. Transition out the carbs. Transition in the meat and fat. Allow your body time to get healthy. Even if it takes 6 months to a year, that is the way to go, because once your body's healthy, your body will be able to metabolize the onboard fat and it will go away. I promise you. I promise you it will. Okay? Peace, love, and meat. I hope that hasn't been too confusing and too wandering. I love you all. Please join me next time. Look below for a link to Pim. See you later.